This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I just got a message saying, yes, it's being recorded. Okay. He says, from the United States of America, the teaching must go out, but Europe is the field for the education of the world in the ideas of a true world unity and for the wise presentation of the plan. From that continent can the inspiration go forth to the East and the West. That was a quote from Discipleship of the New Age 1, which is on our website under the heading of the vision. So just as Britain was the mother of the United States of America, Portugal was the mother of Brazil. And USA is an Aquarian soul whose Dharma is to be a bridge between the fifth and sixth root races. Yet Brazil will be the home of the first subrace of the sixth root race in about 25,000 years' time, after we have finished the great Aquarian cycle. Hence, Portugal is a very powerful place symbolically and actually, placed on the edge of Europe and easily accessible from the rest of Europe and the Americas. But before anything can physically manifest, we have to coalesce with individuals and groups around the world who are interested in participating and contributing to this community. Portugal is a place of many international communities, actually. Sustainable communities, alternative communities, psychological communities, spiritual communities, and many of them have come and gone, but many of them have also stayed. So there are many esoteric reasons for starting this community in Portugal, one of which, of course, is Portugal, port of the Grail, it is said, as in the Holy Grail. And of course, most of you know that the Knights Templar tradition has been very strong in this country since the 11th century. So anyway, just to run through some rules of the road that you would have got in your initial message when you logged on. All sessions will be recorded and made accessible after the event. All audio and video of attendees will be muted except in the case of questions. All attendees can use the chat box to talk to one another. Questions to the presenter are encouraged from the chat box. Please keep remarks respectful and questions succinct. Abusive participants will be removed immediately from the meeting. There'll be no debate or discussion about coronavirus or vaccination. Views expressed by me in my newsletters are not necessarily those of the AWCR, or the Aquarian Wisdom Center Retreat. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? The AWCR welcomes everyone from diverse perspectives of the current world situation. And finally, we appreciate your donations that will cover admin costs and future plans. So a few points about Sagittarius, which I'm going to continue after the meditation. Sagittarius is a sign of orientation and reorientation. And it has sometimes been called the sign of the effect of Scorpio, the previous sign. The moment we have freed ourselves from the illusion in the previous sign, Scorpio, we enter into Sagittarius with a clearer vision of the goal. And of course, this occurs annually, and we amend our vision through the theme of reorientation of Sagittarius. We get a chance to just tweak our course or our bearings, if you like. And DK tells us in esoteric astrology, Scorpio stands midway between two signs of balance or of equilibrium, Sagittarius and Libra. Libra marks an interlude or a notable point of balance before the strenuous testing and trial of Scorpio. Sagittarius marks another point of balance which follows after that testing, for the archer has to acquire and hold a steady eye, hand, and stance prior to firing the arrow, which, when rightly directed and correctly followed, will carry him through the portal of initiation. It's from esoteric astrology. So Sagittarius is the interlude, like Libra, between two signs of initiation, Scorpio and Capricorn, two of the main signs of initiation. Of course, we're going through a global initiation on different levels right now in this current world crisis. So this reorientation in Sagittarius is after the testing of Scorpio, as we head towards, as the, if you like, the journeyman or the wayfarer heads towards the mountaintop of Capricorn. So the Zen archer, if you like, takes aim and fires. Sagittarius is this one-pointed focus to send forth the so-called arrows of, or the arrows of mind, and wait for the returning arrow of the intuition to fire those arrows into the rain cloud of knowable things and seek that which is in the mind of the divine as it returns as an intuitive impression or impulse. So fiery arrows of thought, returning arrow of the intuition. And Sagittarius is well known as a sign of the traveler, of the wanderer, of the wandering monk, the seeker after truth, of knowledge, of higher knowledge. And 2025, which is just around the corner, just 2 or 3 years away, is where we're all headed towards as Sagittarian seekers. The date where the Great White Brotherhood meets in the Council of Shambhala with the Lord of the World on this once-in-a-century meeting to determine the date when the hierarchy will externalize amongst humanity again. And as I've said many times in my newsletters, this is an extraordinary opportunity that has not happened in a long, long time in human history. So we are, and it may happen in our lifetimes for some of us. Just to mention that a lot of people tend to think that 2025 is the date when the hierarchy will reappear. It's the date when they make a decision when to appear, and that could take several decades. We don't really know. It may even happen before 2025. Anyway, so I think just a few little tidbits there about Sagittarius. Let's go into a meditation now that I prepared, a simple meditation for this big group, guided meditation, which will go for about 15 minutes. We're still okay for the sound and everything, help us? Take it we are. Okay, we have about 83 participants so far. Fantastic. Just checking my message box. Sound is okay, very good. And if anyone missed the ground rules who logged on earlier, they are pasted in the chat box. It's one of the first paste-ins. You can see them there. The ones I just read out anyway. Okay. Very good. So let us proceed to the meditation. Most of you are experienced in meditation and group meditations. And as I said, this will be kept simple for the sake of the larger group, but I think we can also carry quite a charge in terms of what we can contribute globally as these full moon festivals are becoming more popular, and we are starting to apply the teachings we've been given in the occult books, of really trying to make practical the vision. And the vision is all about Sagittarius. and visualization is one of the key factors of true meditation. So let us first of all have a personal alignment. I'll sound the Om 3 times to align the personality and the soul. We'll go through various steps throughout the meditation that I'll ask you to visualize, and then we'll finish with a great invocation followed by 3 Oms. So when I sound these 3 Oms, to start with, I'm going to sound them audibly. Visualize your 3 personality vehicles aligning: mental, emotional, and physical, and so forth. Okay. Just relaxing now and letting go of all the business of the day. Taking a few breaths. Visualize the personality as integrated and aligned. And then visualize the soul overlighting the personality, the light of the soul, radiant like a sun, hovering over the light of the personality and descending towards it. And see the 2 lights merging with one another as you work towards the soul, higher self alignment. Now, we see ourselves as a meditating group, a circle of light, if you like, hearts and minds connected. We see ourselves as a meditating group within a much larger group that we call the new group of world servers. The mediating principle between hierarchy and humanity. Then, as a group, we visualize linking the planetary centers with threads of vivified lighted substance. Starting with Darjeeling, Tokyo, Geneva, London, New York City. And we visualize the energy of the indigo blue love wisdom ray, suffused with sparkling violet and brilliant white, pouring through all the planetary centers from one city to another, starting with Darjeeling in northern India, in close proximity to the Great White Brotherhood. seeing the energy flowing out of there like a dynamic fountain. And moving toward Geneva, Central Europe, London, across the Atlantic to New York, and thence around the globe to Tokyo. And as we do so, we see each city lighting up with this vivified love and wisdom energy. And we visualize this continuous circulation of forces and reflect upon our responsibility to the greater planetary plan and purpose. We ponder upon the Sagittarius keynote. I see the goal, I reach that goal, and then I see another. And so we keep on visualizing this dynamic electrical energy of love wisdom flowing around the planet, cleansing the darkened areas, allowing the light to pour through the thick clouds of glamour. And as we do so, we ponder upon the great awakening that is currently occurring. And we reflect upon how we can play our part in the revolution in consciousness that is taking place as we hold silence for another 5 minutes. Holding the mind, steady in the light. Let us now conclude the meditation with the sounding of the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Om. Om. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, before we move on to the next part, I invite anyone to make any comments or ask any questions, either in the chat box, or we can unmute your mic if you want to make a comment or a question. You can direct those to Julia or Inez as the organizers, or in the general chat box for everyone. All right then. Thanks, Adeline. Thanks, Marie. No comments? Risa? Okay, then I shall wait for another minute, I think, for the comments to complete. Just while we're waiting for any more comments, questions, I have not been doing any presentations for a few years online, but intend to do much more regularly now through the auspices of the Aquarian Wisdom Centre. I have a question here. Can you please explain about visualization? Well, just very briefly, to visualize is really invoking the imagination, which is a lower reflection of the intuition, which is where we're all really heading towards in our evolution and ultimate liberation. So that intuitive plane, or buddhi as we call it, direct knowledge, visualization can certainly help bring it about, but not everyone can visualize that well depending on their race structure. Anyway, it's just a short answer there. Dwayne Carpenter is saying, how does the solar minimum cycle which we're in and just leaving affect the solar system and planetary lives? I'm not sure what you mean by solar minimum cycle there, Dwayne. Do you mean the annual solar cycle when the sun goes through Sagittarius? It certainly has a connection to the great galactic center that this full moon is conjunct. But that, of course, is in the realm of some pretty cosmic speculation. Marie says, I saw a lot of light streaming in, gold over New York, silver over Geneva, violet orbs over on London, and blue and green columns of light cleansing through Tokyo. Powerful meditation. Thank you. Aloha from Hawaii. Thank you. Just to let you know, too, on my website, you can find several essays about the planetary centers that I've written in the last 20 years. Bruno says, any idea already of the rhythm of the group work and meditation? Well, we hope to establish a rhythm in these regular meetings. I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean there either. Gloria says, felt a beautiful heart connection. Barb and Kartik say, adding to Dwayne's question, how does humanity touching the sun as per NASA factor into any of this? It's extremely pertinent, isn't it? Because the solar logos that embodies this entire solar system is our local God, if you like, and solar consciousness is what starts to come after the higher initiations are taken. Not just earthly consciousness, but solar consciousness. So, and that is a big possibility on a large scale in this first decade of Aquarius that we're moving into in the next 700 years. I've mentioned that various times in my writings. So quite a momentous period that we're entering into, where a station of light will be established on this planet that will basically make humanity safe from the materialistic forces that have been controlling this planet for so long. So we are on the cusp of an extraordinary period. Not only the Masters of Wisdom returning into active public life amongst humanity, and also the mystery schools being externalized, but also this as a result of the expansion of consciousness and initiations, higher initiations taken by larger groups of people, this station of light being established on this planet. So just a quick review of those questions there. Not going into too much depth, but I've got some more material to present and we can discuss that as we go. Leanne's asking, what do you see in the triple conjunction of Mars, Venus and Pluto in Capricorn on March the 3rd after Venus comes out of her retrograde starting tomorrow? I couldn't comment on off the top of my head on that one right now, Leanne. I'll have to get back to you on that. And someone says, is this a native voyage? Thank you for beginning it. Yes, well, I guess it is. It's our first sort of big chunk of service work we've decided to initiate for this for the association. Tony says, it seems to me that we are standing on a knife edge and it could tip either way. What can we do as individuals to make a difference? Simply go with your conscience and do what you feel you must do. I can't really answer that any better. I could go into details, of course, but I will refrain for now. Are teenagers admitted into the Aquarian Wisdom Center? Well, that's really a very hypothetical question. We're not even there yet. So, all right then, that will do for now. Let's go back to the theme of Sagittarius and a few other things, by the way, that I'll get into. And just to figure out how to have this box hovering over my notes. Just a moment. Okay, just a minute. So I can keep an eye on the questions. Someone says they love my succinct answers. Yes, well, Rosario says, do you really think Portugal has a special part of the New World? Yes, of course. As I said before, it's the mother of Brazil, and Brazil is the first subrace, designated the first subrace of the sixth root race that we're moving into in the next 25,000 years. That 25,000 year cycle corresponds to the greater cycle of Aquarius, we're told. We are in 2 Aquarian cycles now. A 2,160 year cycle, which is the normal precession of the equinoxes going through the signs, but also we're told a greater 25,000 year cycle. And this is only the 7th time that these 2 cycles, the greater and lesser, have coincided with one another in the history of the 5th root race, which is actually 1 million years old in my hidden history chronology. So we are really at an extraordinary juncture of time in history, in world history right now, on many levels. Jim asks a good question here. If you are of a ray type that finds visualization difficult, does it lessen the impact of what you are hoping to achieve in the visualization? Not necessarily, because I think where the intention is there, then that is the key factor. DK tells us in the books that first-rate types find it hard to visualize. I'd imagine fourth-rate types would be the opposite, would be almost overloaded with imagination and visualization ability. So, where was I now? We're coming to these few other points I want to make about Sagittarius. Sagittarius is paradoxically a sign related to noise and silence. I don't know whether any of you know any Sagittarians, but quite often they're they're quite boisterous and loud. They're the sort of person who can stand like 6 inches from your face and talk in a very loud voice that's only required about half the volume. Or they can be a person given to shouting or just generally talking in a loud voice. And this is interesting because we have the labors of Hercules, the 9th labor of Hercules, where Hercules has to clear the marsh of these killer birds, and he does so by sounding these cymbals. Of course, sound is one of the most esoteric sciences that we can work with, and which we'll be working more with as we go into the age of Aquarius, both exoterically and esoterically. Sound builds and it destroys. So there's one aspect of sound or noise, and then there's the silence of Sagittarius, the hermit meditating in his cave, the silence that is required, not necessarily in terms of audible exterior noises, but the internal silence that is required to meditate, silencing the lower mind, the monkey mind, getting to that point of where we can concentrate and start to really meditate. I'll come back to some of these questions that I see in the chat box later. Just no more questions for now, or I won't be able to keep up with them all. Got a mosquito in here. All right, so and Sagittarius is the great traveler. Nicholas Rurik is a good example of, he wasn't a Sagittarius, but he had the sun in Libra with progressed sun in Sagittarius for a lot of his life and did a lot of traveling. The traveler, the wayfarer, the seeker, the Don Cervantes tilting at windmills, the wandering monk. When we travel, we expand the consciousness through contact with foreign cultures and the various individuals that we meet along the way. And this is the way of Sagittarius. That is forever shooting the arrow forward and following to where it falls. Sagittarius in this respect is also a sign of following through what you start, following through to completion. Sometimes Sagittarius can be shooting the arrows off in all different directions. And what Sagittarius is really good at, however, is shooting the arrow like the Zen archer to the target, walking to the target, pulling the arrow out, and then aiming at another target, and not being caught up in the Gemini polarity so much. Gemini is like the juggler who has many balls in the air at once and who often gets distracted in all their projects and never follows through on them. And so the polar opposites are very important in esoteric astrology, that we invoke and that we balance the pairs of opposites within ourselves through those polar opposites. So yes, Sagittarius can be distracted, but it also can be the one-pointed religious zealot as well. We are told that the 6th ray of devotion and idealism, which is the personality ray of the USA and of Russia, is the strongest ray to come through Sagittarius in this cycle. And hence Sagittarians can be great fanatics, particularly in the field of religion, of course, which the 6th ray rules in many cases. But in any particular area of human endeavor, Sagittarius can be a fanatic in politics, in religion, in business or finance, and of course is the major ray that accompanied the age of Pisces that we're just leaving. It started to go out of incarnation in about 1625, but is still very strong, strongly with us in the world today, and there's still a lot of fanaticism around. So, and the 6th ray, of course, is also the most common ray for the emotional body of humanity. Now, I can just backtrack for a moment while I pause to address Bruno's question. We don't have an indication on the race structure of Portugal. Can we relate how to the Brazilian rays given by DK? Yes, we could. I covered this in a recent workshop a couple of months ago, where we speculated on Portugal's rays on one weekend, with predominantly Portuguese people actually. Brazil is a fourth ray soul and a second ray personality, the only nation that's been given as a second ray personality, by the way. And those two rays are most likely in Portugal's makeup. Portugal could be a sixth ray soul. It's hard to say, but it's mainly on the second ray line, 246 line, with a bit of third ray. Doesn't have any seventh ray whatsoever, or fifth ray, I don't think. That's the best short answer for you there, Bruno. And Franz says, so this is interesting time in the world. How does it correspond to our spiritual work as connected to soul? Well, this is the time of waking up of souls and humanity at large, who has been asleep for a long time, is starting to wake up and take the first initiation. Those who have already been on the path for several lifetimes, going through the testings for the higher minor or major initiations. And so I wasn't quite sure exactly what you meant by your question, but that's my best short answer anyway for you there, Franz. So we find ourselves at this critical moment in history. It's the Pluto return in the USA's horoscope, which I've written about several times. Which is happening a couple of years before. It's virtually happening now, and a couple of years before 2025. Several planets are leading signs and going into new signs in 2024, 2025. Pluto from Capricorn to Aquarius, Uranus from Taurus into Gemini, Neptune from Pisces into Aries. All momentous transitions of those planets from those signs at that time. And so the planetary plan, purpose and plan unfolds as per the Council of Shambhala that I mentioned before. And of course, the Lord of the World, or Son of Kamara, and the Great White Brotherhood are always tweaking their plans annually according to how humanity has been responding in the previous annual cycle. Whether they've measured up to the testings, and of course, humanity is being sorely tested right now in their discrimination, their discernment, their will, their ability to stand, to wrestle back their power, all these kind of things. And we are seeing the grossest expression of the materialistic forces working through their minions now, that are doing everything that they can to thwart the plans of the Great White Brotherhood in 2025. Simply, without going into detail, humanity can choose to shorten that time of pain and agony, or extend it for some centuries. But most of us know, who are deeper students of the wisdom, that the battle has been won. Yet that's no cause either or excuse to rest on our laurels or to adopt a laissez-faire attitude. Before the hierarchy can reappear, humanity has to pass several tests, and disciples and initiates and aspirants of the hierarchy, of the various ashrams of the hierarchy, have to pave the way for them. And in doing so, they have to really step up and raise their game and pass these various testings, and in the process become either individually or group initiated. Now, Sagittarius is a sign related to individualization. I'm not sure whether all of you are familiar with my work on the hidden history of humanity, which you can find on video on YouTube. And in my most updated book, Unveiling Genesis, The Mysteries of the Root Races and Cycles. But the time of individualization, 21.5 million years ago, was when humanity had the spark of mind implanted in it, and basically consciousness started to evolve. Humanity moved from being simply members of the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom was created, and the kingdom of souls as well, of course. So Sagittarius, DK tells us in esoteric astrology, is related to individualization. He says, it has been stated that Sagittarius governs human evolution, as the sun was in that sign when the hierarchy began its approach in order to stimulate the forms of life upon our planet. Sagittarius, however, governed the period of the subjective approach. And this is mirrored by Sagittarius as the philosopher, as the thinker, as the one who engages in higher thought upon the abstract plane of mind, which is, of course, the seat of the soul. And the philosophical mind that grasps for ideas that exist in the mind of the divine and wrestles them down to earth. Hence, Capricorn, the following sign, is where those philosophical or religious ideas are encoded, I should say, into earthly laws. So there are many good examples of philosophers who have strong Sagittarius in their chart, moon, sun, or rising sign. And this is a reflection of the influence of Sagittarius in individualization being subjective. Subjective in the sense that most people cannot grasp those higher ideas, but the philosophers and the higher thinkers can and do, and bring them down to the physical plane, and they become encoded as laws to live by in various human cultures. So I invite again any comments or questions. Many musicians are Sagittarius people, says Risa. You've said that you've sent that message to me personally, so send it to everyone if you can. But basically, that's true. I do have an essay about that in one of my books, actually, about people like Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Keith Richards, and someone else, who were all Sagittarians, strong Sagittarius energy. It's very much even David Lee Roth, I suspect, is Sagittarius rising if you look at his personality. And the way. So, yeah, it's Sagittarius is the party animal, is the carousing centaur who gets drunk with all his mates, the other centaurs, the half men, half horse of mythology. And Sagittarius is a sign that really loves the exuberation of life. I think that's a key factor of Sagittarius. Hence the party animal tag for Sagittarius. Sucking the marrow out of life might be a good phrase for Sagittarius, to indulge the senses. You see a lot of people, I think I've written about this as well, in extreme sports, like some of the wingsuited guys who fly down canyons and stuff like that, or do the base jumping. This is all very Sagittarian stuff. It's the great outdoors, which Sagittarius is all about. You know, the beautiful national park in Yosemite and you know, the wide Ponderosa and mountain ranges. These are all Sagittarian themes of, and of course, when we climb these high mountains, we can have spiritual experiences. We're getting literally closer to God in some ways. So I'm just going through the list of comments here. Jeronim says, how likely will a Shambhala impact be in 2025? Well, I don't know, but I have speculated that we could receive the 6th Shambhala impact in history, given the fact that the first 2 Shambhala impacts occurred over millions of years, from about 18 million years ago, and the 3rd Shambhala impact, 1945, the 4th in 1975, the 5th in the year 2000, and it is possible, given the frequency of the most recent Shambhala impacts, that the 6th one may occur in 2025, given the fact also, of course, that there's a meeting in the Council of Shambhala. And the reason for these increased impacts is to speed up human evolution, so that as a calculated risk by the hierarchy, so that we can catch up in our, as laggards within the solar system, you could say. Any of you familiar with the moon chain evolution, which I talk about in my books and videos, is aware of the fact that this particular globe of the Earth scheme has fallen behind, or in fact the whole Earth scheme has fallen behind its spiritual evolution due to the failure, quote unquote, of the moon chain, something that requires a whole discussion about, another session at another time. But that's the short answer on that one. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay. So we're talking about Sagittarius being a subjective sign in some ways. All signs have their subjective component, of course, and their more outward objective component, manifestation. All signs, planets and rays have their higher and lower expression. They all have a shadow expression as well, of course. One of the things I was looking at before was the fact that this full moon tomorrow morning, on Sunday morning on the 19th, is conjunct the so-called galactic center at around about 26, 27 degrees Sagittarius, for what that's worth. I mean, most people, you know, we heard about this in the Mayan cosmology. There is some significance there, but not worth really exploring too much tonight. But what I want to say about this horoscope for this full moon tomorrow morning, cast for Greenwich Mean Time, which is also UT or Universal Time, is Scorpio rising, and Scorpio, of course, is the sign of great testings and trials for initiation. So I see London, you know, Britain, Greenwich, as being, as I've stated in my essays, the throat chakra of the 5 planetary chakras. And any idea that is conceived there, be it a lower or high idea, or a wrong idea, or a good idea, in a sense goes around the world, because the throat center is the seat of the mental body. It's to do with the thinking principle. Of course, Britain is the 5th branch race of the 5th subrace of the 5th root race, where the 555, where the principle of manas or mind has been developed, as of course is the case with Central Europe, Austria, Germany, Scandinavia, etc., all those countries. Anyway, what I was going to say is that Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, jolly, jovial, gigantic Jupiter, boisterous Jupiter, big Jupiter, the biggest planet in the solar system, the co-ruler of the 2nd ray of love wisdom, the so-called sacred planet that rules the 2nd ray of love wisdom, the primary ray of this solar system, and the primary ray of most souls on Earth. And of course, the primary lesson that we are all learning, how to love one another. And Jupiter is in sextile aspect to the Sun in this full moon horoscope, and is placed in Aquarius, the sign of Jupiter's esoteric rulership. Jupiter, as the esoteric ruler of Aquarius, is truly the water bearer who pours forth that electrical plasma of the 2nd ray of love wisdom from the urn that she carries upon her shoulders. And so the fact that it is in such a powerful position in Aquarius, where it's been for most of 2021, by the way, it's going back into Pisces very soon, is very potent for this full moon. It really energizes this full moon because it rules the Sagittarian sun, and it's in harmonious aspect to it, and of course it's in harmonious aspect to the moon in Gemini opposite. Also, what I want to mention about this full moon is Mars and Sagittarius. In my latest newsletter, I had some commentary about Mars and Sagittarius, how in some ways, excuse me, it can be more lethal in terms of events, or more violent, if you like, than Mars and Scorpio, which it's just been through. Mars, the warrior, and Mars is actually the hierarchical ruler of Sagittarius. There are 3 rulers in esoteric astrology for each sign: personality, soul, and hierarchical. And the reason for Mars as a hierarchical ruler of Sagittarius is it's a bit obscure for most students, but it relates to the astral nature, the emotional nature, which Sagittarius, as a fire sign or mental sign, actually exhibits quite a bit of that emotional kind of gushiness, if you like. And the fact that Mars also is the ruler of the solar plexus chakra, the seat of the emotional body. Anyway, I mentioned to you before that Sagittarius is a sign of fanaticism. The 6th ray, which finds its strongest expression through Sagittarius, is the ray of fanaticism par excellence, and Mars is the ruler of the 6th ray, along with Neptune. So Mars and Sagittarius is like a triple whammy of the same kind of aggressive energy, if you like, or energy that can be carried away by itself. I wrote an essay a few years ago, I think it was on the newsletter, to do with Nelson Mandela, maybe 2017, 16, I can't remember now. But the first half of that newsletter is about Mars and Sagittarius, and I describe it as being the loose cannon on the deck. It's an English idiom which relates to a person being out of control. If you like, the archer shooting arrows off in all directions with no true aim or orientation. We're talking here about Sagittarius being a sign of orientation and reorientation, and that Zen archer taking that concentration and steady aim towards the target. So Mars in Sagittarius can be erratic because of this emotional energy that it carries. You know, the emotions that cloud the mind, that break the concentration of the Zen archer, all those kind of things. So Mars in Sagittarius can be quite militant. It can result in violent protests. It can whip up fear even more, and of course this is something that's been going on for the last couple of years, deliberately whipped up by a lot of governments. And of course, if you can control populations with fear, it's a tried and true method. So Mars in Sagittarius is going to be there for a couple more weeks, I think through to January 21st, I think I said in the newsletter. But anyway, it has the potential to disrupt considerably. Its higher purpose, of course, can be directed to a really driven, purposeful search for higher meaning. You know, without the minus the fanaticism. And in this horoscope for the full moon, Mars is in Sagittarius in the first house, widely square to Jupiter, which is interesting because we have Mars, the ruler of the solar plexus chakra, Jupiter, the ruler of the heart chakra. So the challenge there is to raise that energy from the solar plexus to the heart, which of course is the general evolution for humanity in the long term. So come back to any comments or questions. Risa is saying, Mars is spiritual ruler, disciple dedicated to the plan and purpose of God. Yes, that's well said. And Inez is saying, she just remembered that the association, the AWCR Association Solar Return is in 4 days on the 22nd. So it's a wonderful way to celebrate this with this first meeting with all these people present. Yes, indeed, I completely forgot about that. We signed the legal papers for the non-profit association here in Portugal on the solstice last year at the momentous conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. And I think we wanted to get Aquarius rising, but it was delayed, which happens in Portugal. Portugal has a different way of time. And we ended up with Pisces rising. But anyway, it fitted in the long run because coming back to Bruno's comment before, I believe that Portugal is a Virgo soul and a Pisces personality. A lot of other astrologers in Portugal think it's the other way around. I think the Pisces personality is very obvious. And I also choose a Virgo soul for Portugal because it is part of the equipment of Brazil. Brazil is a Virgo personality. Or is it soul? No, personality. So anyway, just a little sidetrack there. Bruno says Mars conjoining the South Node adds in this chart, in this full moon chart, which I haven't shared with you, adds that indication of movement from the past to the future, from solar plexus to heart. All right, I'll just briefly share my screen just to give you a look at that chart. I should have done it before, sorry. Whoops, not that one. There we go. There's the chart there. Everyone can see that okay? Scorpio rising for, this is for our Recife, Spain, but it's the same for London because it's the same universal time. Sun, Sagittarius, opposite Moon, Gemini. So, you know, Sagittarius is a sign where we contact those higher ideas and they are disseminated through Gemini, through the opposite sign, Gemini. See here, interesting conjunction of Venus and Pluto, which someone mentioned before. Yeah, enough said, I think, about that horoscope. We can go back to figure out how to get the screen back again to unshare. Just bear with me for a moment while I figure this out. Oh, okay. Not quite sure which button I have to hit there. Julia or Inez, can you guide me on this one? Oh, there it is. Duh. Stop sharing screen. All right, there we go. And back to the chat box. All right. So, the signs can certainly be explained well in a sequence. They all overlap each other. There is no hard and fast cutoff point with any signs, just as they are in the solar system. Excuse me, in the heavens, as far as the constellations go, as opposed to the signs. They kind of merge and mingle with one another and overlap each other. So if you have a planet close to the end of one sign, you'll quite often exhibit the expression of the next sign as well, especially if it's a fast-moving body like the Moon or Mercury or the Sun. And I explained to you the important sequence before of Scorpio, the testings and trials of Scorpio, which is a sign that also governs the so-called reversal of the wheel. And then the movement of through those tests and trials to Sagittarius and the reorientation, and then the reoriented disciple who steadfastly treads the path and sees the mountain summit in the distance and makes the long haul towards that mountain. And the climb up the mountain, of course, is the Capricorn experience of the goat who climbs the mountain and achieves the summit and becomes the transformed unicorn, white and one-pointed upon the mountain summit. And of course, this is a great symbol of initiation. So Sagittarius is a sign very important for all aspirants and disciples on the path who are seeking to take that next step, who sense the next step towards the next expansion of consciousness, whether that's a minor or major initiation. So, and then of course, Capricorn represents, from one point of view, the status quo, the society that we live in. And the following sign, Aquarius, represents the revolutionary overturning of that society culture that's become crystallized. Capricorn is a sign that suffers the most from crystallization. It's the most material and spiritual sign of the zodiac. It can be the five-pointed star pointing downwards, which represents the material misuse of forces, or the up-pointed five-pointed star, which represents the mind, manas, the right use of mind, of the of humanity. So Aquarius is ruled by Uranus is the energy that overturns the status quo of Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. And of course, we've had this long running square dance between Saturn and Uranus, excuse me, in the heavens, which goes all the way through to about October 2022, where they're still both in orb of square to each other until then. Not exactly, but still in an orb of influence. And what we're seeing in the world today is precisely being played out with Saturn representing the status quo and Uranus representing that which is new, and the struggle between the two in this late part of Pisces, the cuspal period of Pisces before Aquarius begins, where we have still many people who are living in the Piscean age. We have smaller groups who are somewhere between the two extremes, and we have, of course, the few people who are definitely living in the Aquarian age. So we have these three groups of human beings at the moment. The greater group in Pisces, the much lesser group in Aquarius, and then an intermediary group between the two. And of course, we have the chaos of the cusp of the ages, of the 500-year cusp that started around about the 1700s, and will go through to about 2100, when the sun actually astronomically precesses into Aquarius. And we also have the outgoing ray of the 6th ray and the incoming ray of the 7th ray, and hence the confusion and chaos that ensues with these huge changes. Plus, as I state in my newsletters regularly, the cusp of the root races, or of the 5th subrace going into the 6th subrace, which will be the seed for the 6th root race as such. You all following me? I'm not going too fast here, am I? I'll stop for a question or comment while I have a sip of water. To anyone who's not familiar with the rays, it essentially is the esoteric astrology is the science of the 7 rays. But the 7 rays can be studied separately as the discipline of esoteric psychology, as per the books of DK, Esoteric Psychology 1 and 2. But if the rays are known and intuited, we have to study the rays concretely, but also reflect upon them intuitively. Then the soul ray that we ascertain works through the rising sign, and the personality ray works through the sun sign. The sun sign in esoteric astrology is the personality expression of the horoscope, and the rising sign, which is determined by the exact moment that you took your first breath in the body, is the sole purpose. That's what you're developing. Even though in exoteric astrology, the rising sign can be the outer mask that you wear, but don't necessarily access more deeply at a soul level. The sun is the personality. The rising sign is the sole purpose. And to remind you all too that you cannot get your rays from the horoscope. Each sign has rays coming through it, but it is simply an interface for the expression of the known rays. You will see online there are some various websites that have formulas for ascertaining your rays based upon your date and time of birth, which is totally ridiculous. And you'll also see other techniques where people claim to be able to get your rays. I propose that all of them are wrong. The only person who can really figure out your rays is you, and it requires a fair bit of study and reflection. It can take years to figure them out. I don't want to discourage you at all. We'd all like them to fall into our consciousness like the lotto balls on Thursday night, but unfortunately, doesn't happen that way. Although some people do actually get their rays given to them in a dream, rays dispensed by certain teachers are also incorrect. Quite often they are ridiculous combinations of rays that directly contradict some of the statements that the Tibetan made in the Alice Bailey books about the rays. So just to remind briefly about that whole minefield that the rays can be. Also, we'd like to, there are certain analysis tests that you can do about the rays, but that can be sometimes a trap as well, because we tend to want to be a certain quality of a ray. For instance, many second ray people would like to have these first ray qualities in them, and so they may choose first ray answers that can be misleading. And then the other factor is that you can invoke your rays that aren't even in your makeup through the horoscope. For instance, you may not have any first ray, technically speaking, in your ray structure, in your soul, personality, mental, emotional, and physical bodies. But you might have, for instance, a strong first ray sign like Aries, which takes the first and seventh rays through it in your horoscope, that you can invoke that first ray energy quite powerfully, particularly if there's a first ray ruler like Vulcan or Pluto in that sign, or powerfully aspected or tenanted by a house. So where does one start? Tony says, well, read the books and read them and digest them in a reflective, meditative way. That's where you start. And it's like the esoteric sciences are like studying any science at university. You have to learn the terminology, the jargon, the ground rules, the foundational structures, and then apply them. And that can take a lifetime, or lifetimes, plural, in fact. So, yeah, that's how we learn about the rays. Bruno says here, this point of transition seems like we are all invested in Chiron, addresses to heal the past and with the sensibility of the future. Yeah, the Tibetan does say in the blue books, as we call them, that the asteroids are very important, and Chiron is one of the asteroids, technically a planetoid, but particularly physically, the asteroids are important. So we have the asteroid goddesses, such as Ceres Demeter, Pallas Athena, Hygeia. They're all very, very powerful. But when I do a reading, I often find that it's just too much detail for most people. If people want to come back and do another reading looking more at asteroids, then that's a deeper level to explore. So, how are we going for understanding, and any other questions that are related to Sagittarius that we've touched upon tonight? Lots to integrate, someone said, yes. Okay, well, in the future talks that I'll be offering here on this forum, we'll cover everything. I do have an Ageless Wisdom course that I don't run anymore online because I've got too much on these days, but there are many topics in that course that I'd like to cover. One is music, which is about three presentations. Another one is Glamour, a World Problem, the name of one of DK's books, to understand the nature of glamour, illusion, and Maya. Meditations, dream experience. Then, of course, there's a monthly meeting that will be held on each side of the zodiac. So this is the Sagittarius meeting. We're thinking of doing other ones in between, maybe every couple of weeks, on these other subjects. On also the hidden history of humanity, I may run another one-day workshop on that, actually. If anyone is interested, send your feedback to the Aquarian email address, the Aquarian Wisdom Center email address, not to me. And any of your questions, do direct them to that email address. My other work of writing is kind of separate from this, but it's kind of interrelated too, if you know what I mean. Someone's saying they'd like to buy, Maria is saying she'd like to buy all of Philip's books in Portugal. Where may I do it? Unfortunately, they're not available in Portugal. And they're only available really on Amazon USA, which you can access with a VPN, hopefully, and get much cheaper postage. I only post out books in the United States through my friends in California because the postage is quite reasonable. But anywhere outside the United States, even Canada or Mexico, the postage rates are outrageous. They cost more than the books, you know. So I don't send them to Europe. But people in Europe can access Amazon if you use a VPN and can get them sent to someone you know in the States. I'm sorry about that. It's Amazon has me over a barrel in many ways with the selling of my books, but that's another story. So eventually, we hope to have printing projects and book distribution projects with this Ageless Wisdom Center in this Aquarian Wisdom Center, I should say, in Portugal, and even the production of, we have 4 years of Portuguese translations of my newsletters. We have several books just there that we're looking at producing somewhere down the track, even starting up a business of printing, publishing, and distribution of books and so forth. Not just mine, but other people's as well. So eventually I may get my books printed in Europe or in Portugal rather than the United States, which has been the case for the last 20 years. So that answers Maria's question. Lee says, what is the purpose, the expression of dominion of mankind in this coming age? Dominion of mankind in this coming age. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but in some ways it means dominion or triumph over the physical plane. And that would be partly through the right use of technology, which is currently, of course, being severely abused and misused. But the surmounting of that mountaintop of initiation in Capricorn, mind over matter. There is a quote by DK in one of the books about the conquest of Everest, which the hierarchy were watching with great interest in 1953, when Edmund Hillary conquered the summit for the first time, Tenzing and Hillary. I think this is partly what's meant by dominion, by that creation of a great center of a station of light, is the phrase that DK uses, in the next 700 years on this planet, through various powerful groups of disciples and initiates, being able to hold the line, so to speak, or to hold the energy that will keep that light shining and put humanity in a safer place than it is today. Ghislaine says, oh, nothing. Tina says, where can I find more info about engagement of group work in Sweden? There are several groups in Sweden, Tina. You might be able to contact Anne Peterson. On Facebook, you might be able to find her, Anne Peterson, from Sweden. Maria says, I wish to be part of that printing project. Well, we'll keep you in our volunteers folder, Maria. Thank you. Kim Knight says, a good way to get things sent from USA is to use a PO box service in USA, for example, myus.com. Yes, thank you, Kim. I remember that someone said that before. All right, thank you for your comments, Jim, Lee, Ghislaine. Thank you for your comments, Ghislaine. Thanks, Tony. Rita says, so Hillary, who attended the summit, was a member of my partner's family. Rita, you're still sending to the private, but not to worry, I'll just send it to everyone anyway. And Kerry Woodward's just dropped Anne's email in there, peterson@hotmail.com. I hope she doesn't mind. I don't think she will. She will mind. Anne has hosted many of my talks in Sweden, and is a very generous person to contact. Okay. Any other comments or questions? So I'm going to come back full circle to the comment I made at the beginning to just remind you before we all go our way tonight. The Master Dwashkul, or DK, said through his amanuensis, Alice Bailey, workers increasingly will be drawn to Britain and to the continent of Europe. Workers as in esoteric workers, spiritual workers. From the United States of America, the teaching must go out, but Europe is the field for the education of the world in the ideas of a true world unity and for the wise presentation of the plan with a capital P. From that continent can the inspiration go forth to the east and the west. So I think Portugal is a place ideally suited for that, for all the reasons that I've given, and I've probably missed a few reasons as well. But if you go to our website, you'll find, that was on the original link in the newsletter, you will find more detail about the vision, the purpose in both the English and Portuguese languages. Thanks for your kind comments, everyone. Cosmos says, will we be able to listen to the recording again? Yes, the recording will be made available after the next day or two. And if you've signed up for the email list for the association, then we'll send an email out giving you a link to go to download that file if you want to listen to it again. Glad you enjoyed the meditation, Cosmos. Thank you for your comments, Paula. All right, well, if there's no other comments or questions, I think we'll wrap it up. And thanks everyone for turning up. Do tell all your friends and co-workers that we're doing this. The more the merrier. And please give us your feedback through the week if there's anything that you think of that can be done better with the presentation or with the technicalities of GoToMeeting, all those kind of things. And don't forget also, we need donations to keep this whole program running. So any donation, small or large, is greatly appreciated. Sent to, of course, the donation button on the that you were given the other day, or on the association website. So very good. All right then, I'll close the meeting and I'll say ciao for now. Good night.
Thanks, Philip. Bye-bye.